Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Tuesday Leadership Tip. I'll start by saying, the last few weeks for me have been very eye-opening, personally and professionally. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I guess I felt some of that. You recall from my previous tip a couple weeks ago that my uncle passed away. What I didn't tell you is that my aunt is dealing with cancer and chemo treatments, and it just breaks my heart that she's having to endure all of this simultaneously. And then shortly after my uncle passing, the relationship I had with a girl fell completely apart. And at my age, those things sting that much harder. So long story short, I was not in a good place. And that leads me to today's topic, vulnerability. I've been reading a lot about the topic and the power of vulnerability in school. It's definitely a growing area of research, and it seems like we're just scraping the surface of what kind of potential there is for leaders to show a vulnerable side. And I realized by opening up personally these last few weeks, I was able to build much stronger connections with a lot of people. And I learned much more about them and their lives. Some of it was humbling as I learned they were dealing with things far greater than what I was enduring. And some of it was positive. Things that I learned about them, they were thankful for the good that was happening in their life at that moment. But either way, letting myself be vulnerable and opening up, it created a pathway for much deeper conversations that allowed me to get a stronger connection. And let's face it, all of you are leaders where connecting with your people, it deeply matters. And in my studies, I've been reading a lot. And there was a book that just recently came out last year, Leading with Vulnerability. The author, who was this researcher, took the time to interview over 1,000 CEOs, world leaders, employees. And what he found out is that there is great power in being vulnerable and opening up about your challenges, your struggles, failures in personal life. But that being said, he mentions it's not an open door to constantly open up every day asking for help, talking about your mistakes, sharing your emotions, but to do things in an appropriate amount, which is probably more likely than you are doing right now, and to do so in a way that shares what have you learned and how are you hoping to create a positive outcome from these things. This is leading with vulnerability. And not only does it share with your employees that you're human, but it shares that you're transparent and genuine, and it opens the door for them to feel comfortable in opening up to you. And the power of creating these connections, it builds trust, and based on the research, it increases employee performance. Not to mention, trust me when I say it, it feels good to create those bonds. I know many of you put more hours in at the dealership than at home. So having those strong relationships with the people around you at work, it's going to pay off on multiple levels. So my Tuesday tip is, how can you lead your employees with more vulnerability? What have you been holding inside that might be better to share in a way that builds stronger connections with your team? And if you don't believe me just yet, I've got some stats that I want to read off that this researcher found on the power of vulnerability. So let's see if these ring a bell or matter. It said they found that employees are 5.7 times more likely to rate the quality of their leadership as good or excellent than with people who rarely or never share. And the percentage of leaders that are considered high quality increases 37%. Here's some other stats. Employees are 1.7 times more likely to come up with novel solutions and creativity when they're led by a vulnerable leader. They're 2.7 times more likely to they themselves be vulnerable. And we talked about building those connections. They're 5.3 times more likely to trust you as their manager. They're 2.2 times more likely to trust what you say is right. And they're 2.9 times more likely to be engaged in their job. And here's another big one. They're twice as likely to stay. And we know about the turnover issues that impact dealerships. So anyways, that is my Tuesday tip. Thanks for allowing me to be vulnerable. And I hope you're one of those that is in a good place right now and you're savoring those moments. Thank you.